minimum viable change pattern I'm going to talk about is the kernel, or the kernel pilot. And the reason we're calling it the kernel pilot is you can think of this as the first adoption of a set of suggested changes to an organization. And that subset is really kind of enough to be sort of a microcosm of your target state that you're trying to get to in the context of a larger transformation. The idea here is that the kernel pilot is going to help you validate many of the methods, processes, roles, and organization structure that you're suggesting the entire organization transform to. For this to work, you need to find some change recipients who have a subset of problems that are drivers for the transformation. You want to make sure that they've got enough drivers, or that the problems address most of those drivers. So in plain English, what we're trying to say here is that when you're creating this minimum viable change for a kernel pilot, you want to make sure that you find a set of potential change recipients who are undergoing a lot of problems that are similar to the overall problems of the organization, so that you can validate that this kind of target state is actually going to help the overall organization. You don't want to go and choose a functional silo of change recipients. What you're trying to do is get to a kind of not co-located, but a sort of a cross-functional group, such as one represented by one line of business. You could think of it as an end-to-end value stream. So maybe the manager, the business analysts, the developers, and the testers, anybody else, who are all working together to build value. You want to do this so that it becomes, again, an accurate reflection of the overall target state. When you're doing this kind of work, one of the actions we recommend doing is it's a lot of hands-on coaching and a lot of hands-on facilitation. You aren't just giving process material to a bunch of folks in a target state and saying, have at it, because there's a lot of things that could go wrong in terms of people's ability to learn and people's ability to adopt new methods, especially if they're some of the first people who are going to adopt these new methods. You may supplement it with some light write-up of methods and library material, but keep it lightweight. This is really about finding, again, a subset of users that are working in an integrated way to deliver value, or that you want to be working in an integrated way to deliver value, with a target state using a blend of agile methods and maybe some structural change that address, again, a subset of the overall problems that are within the organizational transformation. And you want to validate that these things work. And the best way to do that is coaching and facilitation, not writing a lot of material. One way of looking if you're on the right track, and some success criteria you could look at, is really just all about participation in the minimum viable change. What you're saying here is the number of people that actually accept to be part of the pilot, number of people that participate, number of people that actually start using new agile methods. Finally, you could look at what's the percentage in actual improvement in performance, and maybe how many of these folks are willing to present or socialize the success and or learnings that they've received. In order to get through all this, it's a substantial amount of time to see some reasonable results, at least 3 to 5 months before you're going to start seeing some kind of difference. A lot of that is going to be really taken in coaching time. Again, hands-on, dedicated time, coaching, and you're going to need at least a couple of change agents, especially if you're looking more at the 20 to 30 people. You need a lot of help here. Sometimes you might even need more change agents who've got good experience in agile techniques and can help share the burden of doing the work and the new methods with the team. There's also going to be some upfront training time as well, but you should really keep this to a minimum, and when doing training, try to make sure that the workshops are with real projects and not just real project artifacts, and not just kind of like canned exercises. This shouldn't be more than a week maximum. The benefits here are, one, of course, is you're going to improve performance and capability. But again, the real reason you're doing this is you're trying to get a demonstrable beachhead into moving the organization into the target state. You spent a bit of time figuring out what that target state is. You've created a smaller version of that and figured out a place to test this. And now you've actually got this target state working somewhere. In terms of communication, obviously you're going to have to update stakeholders and sponsors and all that kind of good stuff, because again, you're trying to validate the target state for a large organization. But it's also important to point out that the first time you do this, you shouldn't be finding a distributed or a dispersed team. You'll want to be doing as much in-person work as you possibly can, as much high-touch facilitation, much co-location as you can possibly get away with. Not always applicable or possible in every organization, but try to favor this. Finally, if you really look at what is the vision of a kernel pilot, you're trying to realize the outcomes of most of the transformation elements in some subset of the organization. This typically isn't the first minimum viable change that you want to execute when you're running a larger organizational transformation. Most of the time you'll get organizational resistance or trying to do something this ambitious, so you'll want to start it only after you've already rolled out a couple of quick win style minimum viable changes. Or if you've already got good buy-in, then you could start with this right away. But again, most of the organizations we've been to, you need to actually get some demonstrable results established before you do this. This is going to be your first real test of the vision, the target state. You'll get some notion of what kind of coaching actions you should be using, what type of transformation actions are going to best work with people, how high touch it needs to be. But you really are trying to keep it high touch and have an eye on looking at your target state and adjusting it and maybe even pivoting it if it's not working well. This isn't such a good test of the commitments to benefits side of the equation, because what you're going to find is that the commitments have to be high compared to the benefits you're going to get. There's a lot of high-touch action required. It's going to have to run a little bit longer with some more, kind of agile coaching assistance. And as you do other minimum viable changes later on, you can start looking at how to optimize commitment to benefit. Again, of course, what we really want to do is keep moving on some of our earlier wins that we've established thanks to some previous quick win style minimum viable changes, and keep those wins going by getting a nice foothold on the target state established in some area and prove by doing that this thing can work.